welcome back everyone to our closing session. I have to say I am just as excited going into this session as I was for our first, our opening remarks. This year's theme was empowered educators igniting profession-based learning. And I definitely have heard a lot of empowerment, a lot of agency, and a lot of actionable items that each of us can take from today's speakers and panelists and make those connections work for us. Corey, what are you excited about?
Well, people can attest that we're in one of the last breakouts that I was so excited that one of our partners that's actually helping us put on this event told me we had to leave because we had to shut down the room to get ready for our closing session, but we had so much energy coming from all the various participants about what was happening in the sessions. And I, as it tends to happen, I got all kind of riled up and excited, and I'm still there. So it's been a fantastic event so far. That I've gotten a lot out of it just listening to others and talking about their approaches.
Absolutely. And no end of resources and links and places and spaces for us to go once we can all be in person and travel again. But Corey, you get to introduce our next speakers, so I don't want to hold that up at all.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I'm happy to do that, and I'm excited to introduce you to a great person who's been connected to CAPS. Before I do that, though, I'm wondering if anybody else out there is, we created this event in such a strange time, right? The last 12 to 18 months, where we've struggled back and forth with what it means to try and learn virtually or connect with people when we can't be in person. And even in the planning of this event, the question as to whether or not we would be fully in person again or virtual, and trying to make this as meaningful as possible. I'm wondering if others out there are, because there's been so much great content opportunity to connect with people, but we've had some stacked opportunities. If anyone's feeling that fear of missing out, that you got to be a part of a great session, but you're so curious what happened with one of the other sessions. And I've got some good news for you, which is these sessions are being recorded and they will be made available at the Preparing for Purpose website shortly after the event. So I personally am excited about that because there were some fantastic sessions that I didn't get to see live, but I am so excited to dig in and be a part of those going forward. Please get into the chat, especially during this final session. Introduce, if you haven't had a chance yet, introduce where you're from, who you represent, but also, share with us what was the most impactful part of your day today. That helps us as we prepare future events. Tell us which speakers spoke to you most powerfully, any quotes that you wrote down. That we're going to keep a log of the chat, and that's going to be information we can all use going forward. You can see, Lydia, see how riled up I am? Okay, I'm back on task.
Nothing new there.
I'm back on, nothing new there. So I'm back on task. So excited to introduce to you Rashawn Caruthers. Rashawn worked career and technical education programs for Kansas City Public Schools for a number of years. Prior to that, she worked in industry and now is someone who's on a team that we really love to work with, which is the Getting Smart team, led by Tom Vander Ark. So Rashawn is now the Director of Learning Experience for Getting Smart. And Rashawn, I think, is going to challenge us with what our next steps are, and then have a chance to introduce our closing keynote. Rashawn, thanks for being here.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. It's so great to see all of the good information in chat and to hear what everyone's excited about. And I'm just really, really excited to be here. I see some of my friends are here on the participant list. So it's so great to see you all. And that's just such the wonderful thing about CAPS. It's just a really great connector of people. When I first got introduced to CAPS, when I was working with the Kansas City Public Schools, and I was able to meet Corey and Greg and the rest of the great CAPS team, it was so inspiring. And I have yet to not be inspired when dealing with this amazing organization. So I just, again, would just like to thank Corey and the whole CAPS team for inviting me to introduce our closing speaker today, Mr. Clifton L. Taulbert. But before I introduce Mr. Taulbert, I'd like to share a point with you. As Corey mentioned, I work for Getting Smart, and at Getting Smart, we start off every event with a poem to ground our thinking. So, as you're listening to the poem Just Beyond Yourself by David White, I challenge you to reflect on what the words mean to you in your next big step. And I also challenge you just to drop some reflections in the chat. We love to see your comments and your insights. So, this is Just Beyond Yourself by David White. Just beyond yourself is where you need to be. Half a step into self forgetting, and the rest restored by what you'll meet. There's a road always beckoning. When you see the two sides of it closing together at that far horizon and deep in the foundations of your own heart at exactly the same time, that's how you know it's the road you have to follow. That's how you know it's where you have to go. That's how you know you have to go. That's how you know. Just beyond yourself is where you need to be. What do you know for sure? Where do you have to go? Where do you need to be? In choosing this poem, it reminds me of The Road Less Traveled by Robert Frost that we all know about the two roads that diverged in the wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. My goal today, like Corey said, is to challenge you to take your next big step to make all the difference. Listen, we had a tough couple of years as educators. We had to take unexpected steps, leaps for most. Some happened as a natural response to change, but most were out of necessity to shift so that students could learn. What most people didn't realize until as educators, you all were thrust into the spotlight, of course, is that you all make learning personalized and differentiated every single day so that students can be seen, heard, valued, and successful. I applaud you. Seeing the resilience, the passion, the determination of educators was and still continues to be beautiful and inspiring. I have never been so proud to be part of your squad. I've recently transitioned to Getting Smart, but I spent many years in the classroom as a teacher and serving as the administrator of career and technical education for Kansas City Public Schools. In my role in both, oftentimes I had to take big steps. I was often faced with tough decisions, like many of you all are, that impacted students and adults. It's easy to get caught up in what's best for adults, but someone reminded me once that if you make decisions that are best for kids, you'll never be wrong. I took that advice to heart and it has never failed me. One of my proudest moments was when I saw a young man who was the first in the country to pass an industry recognized credential at Mayo Career Technical Center, where I served as the administrator for wastewater management. He was a graduate from East High School in Kansas City, Missouri. The way his family, a family that realized the American dream, celebrated in the parking lot after he graduated was a whole vibe. I will never forget their joy, the way they uplifted that amazing young man. He took the next big step. By being a first generation high school graduate, he immediately changed the trajectory of his family. By taking the next big step of passing an IRC that's challenging for adults, so he could work for the city of Kansas City, starting out at $47,000 as a 17-year-old, he changed the trajectory of his family. Oftentimes in Getting Smart, we say that everyone has a next big step. Which one are you willing to realize? This work isn't easy. Our speaker today believes that your will to succeed remains one of your greatest assets. You all have shown up and shown out for kids. Now I ask you, what's next? What are you going to challenge yourself to do to keep raising the bar for you and your students? What will be your next point of impact? I want you to decide today. I need you to decide today. You will have been so inspired by all the information you received today, and I don't want you to lose that fire. Ask yourself if what you're doing today is getting students closer to where they want to be tomorrow. Our speaker, Mr. Taulbert, believes in getting people closer to where they want to be by using an entrepreneurial mindset. The author of Who Owns the Ice House, Clifton Taulbert, is a critically acclaimed author, entrepreneur, and storyteller. A son of the Mississippi Delta, Mr. Taulbert reminds us that when we think others matter, lives change. Affectionately referred to as the CAPS ambassador because of his passion for the motto and sense of community, Mr. Clifton Taulbert is a shining example of what happens when you keep taking big steps. Mr. Taulbert, we welcome you and thank you for being with us today.
Rashawn, it is my pleasure, my absolute pleasure. And thank you for the poem because it fits right into my starting statement. The future should always be an agenda item. And I think that is so appropriate and it is so apropos for today. CAPS to me represents all of that. For many of us, my age and over, the future lived in a faraway place, a place that we would hardly go or visit. Maybe the future lived in China, Tibet, somewhere else, but never around the corner, never down the street, never right close by. But that has all changed. Technology has closed the gap, and the future we once sought through the stars and the moon, Richard Branson and Jeff Bezos has told us that an average person, with a couple of $1 billion though, but an average person can actually go to the edge of space. The world has changed. The future should always be an agenda item. And I think that CAPS has positioned itself to be at the right place at the right time. So, but what is the CAPS legacy if not student success? So keeping future focus is what I suggest to all of you, myself included. Don't be so comfortable with where we are that we fail to be able to understand and realize that we can reach the stars. We can play right outside of the landing ship. We can stake another flag on the moon. There's nothing we can't do, but keeping future focus is absolutely critical. We're going to look at 3 doors that you will go in. And those 3 doors will be called doors of exploration. The first one would be about mentoring, leveraging your knowledge. The second door is the entrepreneurial door, planning beyond the known. Oftentimes, what we know can either be a launching pad or it can leave us completely stated and seated where we comfortably are. But the future demands more of us than that. That's why I think it is so important to remember that we are just beyond the next step. And the last one is an impactful culture. How do we ensure community? Because I'm a firm believer at the end of the day, as long as there's blood running in our veins and we still talk, we still laugh, we still cry, we still rejoice, we still get sad, that our humanity demands of us an appreciation of life and relationships. And when you mix these 3 things together, mentoring, entrepreneurial thinking, and an impactful culture as foundational to sustain success, we're headed in a way and among a set of circumstances that can literally keep changing the world, not just changing the world, but changing the world for good. That is the world of my birth, the cotton fields of the Mississippi Delta. With my knees pulled up to my chin, I looked as far as I could, and all I could see were the cotton fields of the Delta. And I thought this would be the end of my world. And in many worlds today, wherever those worlds might find themselves, outside of the United States, within our own country, urban areas, rural areas, there will always be a young man or a young boy or a young lady or a young girl somewhere who have assumed that they have seen the end of their world because they have seen this same sight over and over and over again. And sometimes you see it so much and it becomes such a part of your landscape that you make the assumption that this is my world and it will never change. But let me explain to you that when the screen door opens, and this is not just a metaphor for a door, but this is actually what happened in my life. When the screen door opened, my great-grandfather came out onto the front porch. And he said, "Clifton, that's me. Who wants to go to Greenville with me?" Well, Greenville was, in those days, was called the Queen City of the Mississippi Delta. an incredible place. It was tantamount to taking the Concorde to Paris, France, or maybe hitchhiking with Richard Branson on my way to space, because I had lived in Glen Allen, Mississippi all my life. And it was a very small cotton community. But my great-grandfather clearly understood that the future lived 27 miles away. And all he had to do was to get his great-grandson in that set of circumstances, and perhaps he could change his life. But what drove my great-grandfather is what's important. It was his unselfish heart, his ability to look beyond the circumstances, and his dream for his great-grandson, a dream that I was too young to have for myself, but one that he had for me. And what does that say to us as educators today? Those of you who open your hearts and your doors and your intellectual acumen, and you invite all of these young people into your room, into your classroom, sitting around your desk, into the hallways, on the playground. But it is the unselfishness that dictates the actions that we take. And that is very, very important, because I see unselfishness as a powerful individual and team trait to live out and to pass along. Not only does the unselfishness help the person who's the recipient of it, but it also gives a young person something to see, something to look at. Wow, I saw what the teacher did. He didn't have to do that. She didn't have to do that. She actually shared her lunch with one of the students. It's amazing. I could smell that sandwich way over here. I wish she had asked me to. Unselfishness is watched. And for those of us who are adults, and those of us who understand that we can open the screen door and give other people an opportunity to see their lives lived out differently, then unselfishness is who we want to become, not what we want to be, but who we want to become in the process, becoming that unselfish person. So this is me, Clifton Taulbert, and my family were former domestic migrant cotton field workers. That was my first job, was carrying a sack of cotton, chopping up weeds from around cotton. But you know, that one trip to Greenville, that 27 miles jaunt from Glen Allen to Greenville on a Saturday morning with my great-grandfather became part of the change agency that would change my life to the possibilities. So today I have migrated from the cotton field worker to an entrepreneur. I believe in entrepreneurship. I believe in dreaming big. I believe in accomplishing more than you ever thought you could. I believe in Richard Branson, that if you got the wherewithal and you stick to it as long as you can, that you can make a spaceship that can take you to the moon or beyond, take you to the limits of space, and you can become an astronaut, but you can also become an entrepreneur right where you are. I'm a Pulitzer Prize nominee. I couldn't even go to the library when I was a kid, simply because of my race. But did they know when they shut the door in my face? They were actually shutting the door in the face of the first person who would ever win the Mississippi Institute of Arts and Letters Award for nonfiction, or the Doubleday Book Writer of the Year. I became that, an educator, international lecturer, and a workplace human capital consultant, which gives me the opportunity to share my thoughts and to learn from others all over the world. But there was a time when my world was very confined to the cotton fields of the Mississippi Delta. But the unselfishness of my great-grandfather and his ability to dream for my future, as you as educators are dreaming for the future of others. Remember, the future that we speak of now is not in a faraway place at all. It's right around the corner. It's on our doorsteps. It's knocking at our door. And our students today must be ready for a world that will be defined by planned and unplanned disruption. One open screen door 50 years later would find me lecturing in the Assembly Hall of the United Nations, giving a speech about the importance of entrepreneurial thinking, the importance of innovation, the importance of understanding that what you currently have does not mean that you have accomplished everything that you can, that where you stand is not the place that you will always end up being, but there are other places you can go, other things you can do, and other work you can accomplish. 46th Street in New York City never occurred to me would be a place where I would find myself. I never thought that the United Nations would have a place for a guy from Glen Allen, Mississippi, to come and stand and talk to the world, but it happened. It happened because along my journey, I met incredible people, incredible educators, incredible friends. And what did they all have in common? For whatever reason, they were all pointing me toward a future that was yet to be. No one was let me be comfortable being in just the world I knew. But when I left Glen Allen, I went to St. Louis. And I thought St. Louis was the end of the world. I mean, there are train stations, there are 3-story buildings, there's pavement everywhere. I thought I had seen it all. There was nothing else to see. But then I went somewhere else. I joined the military. And joining the military as a young soldier, I thought, again, this is it. You know, I've come here, now I'll go home. But in those assignments, end up in Washington, D.C., and then eventually I end up in college. Life just kept moving, kept moving, kept moving, kept moving. And this is what happened when we employ the entrepreneurial way of thinking. But it's not just about starting a business. It is about jumpstarting our life to accomplish more than we ever thought we could. And standing in the Assembly Hall of the United Nations, I will never, ever forget that day, that evening, that moment in time, when this little boy became a man again and stood before a crowd of people, none of whom he knew, to share with them his story about an innovative life because of the unselfishness of others and those educators, be they aunts, uncles, cousins, or the teachers who live their lives beyond their present reality and looked to the future. Just remember, the future is not a faraway land. It is not China. It is not Tibet. The future is right around the corner, coming down your street, to your door, to your house. So we're going to look at 3 doors today to explore, to understand student success and understand how the legacy of CAPS can look. We're going to talk about mentoring. That's door number 1. We're going to talk about entrepreneurial thinking. That's door number 2. We're going to talk about culture. That's door number 3. Now, I wish I had presents or surprises to give you as you go behind these doors, but I think the prize and the present will be the young people that you will see hereafter, because I would hope that each one of these doors will have information that you can take with you, information that can help you continue to do the good work that you're doing, and to help you to reach further than you've ever thought you could, because what I believe is that your journey has just begun. Door number 1 is about mentoring. Educators, I want you to know that your presence matters. Yes, your academic acumen matters, but your presence matters. Your laughter, your heart, your handshake, the tone of your voice, all of these things matter. So mentoring is not just teacher to student, but mentoring is peer-to-peer as well as students. But it's about unselfishly leveraging your knowledge, maximizing teamwork. Most of you and many of you have 8, 10, 12, maybe 15 or 20 years of higher education under your belt. How do you unselfishly leverage that knowledge so that the young people within your reach, your peers that work alongside you, how can you look at that storehouse of knowledge that you have as something you want to open up the doors wide and say, walk into my world, let me share with you all that I have learned, and let me learn from you as well. That is what mentoring is all about. It's about leveraging your knowledge so that that other person, so that that other child, that peer that worked alongside you can know not only what he or she knows, but what you know as well. Now the team began to come together in a way that I would say come together in a way that a win is a sure thing. Now, as Corey has probably heard me say, I probably should be very careful on using athletic metaphors because I'm the least athletic human male on the face of this earth. I talked to Michael Jordan for 15 minutes, had no idea who he was. I kept saying the guy really looks familiar. But I promise you today, everyone that I'm talking about, I have some idea as to who they are. They don't just look familiar. But the first door is about mentoring. I want you to embrace mentoring as not a special project, but an ongoing way of living. Mentoring peers and students, unselfishly leveraging your knowledge. And I sometimes look at mentoring as I do a refinery, because for a refinery takes crude oil and creates almost 6,000 other products that comes out of one bucket of crude oil because of the refining process. That is taking all the knowledge that is built within the refining mechanisms so that when the crude oil makes its way through that, the byproducts of that journey are absolutely phenomenal, even to the point of female lipstick. That is one of the products that comes out of the refining of crude oil. But I look at mentoring as refining and more. When you mentor and really share your heart and your life and your academic acumen, your journey with another person, you are absolutely discovering more. You're giving that student an opportunity to reach further than he had thought, because now in the leveraging of your knowledge, you will be bringing information that he or she may not have known before. And once you know that information, then you bring that to bear and say, wow, I can use this, I can do this. And this is what you want, that self-discovery. When you say to yourself, I can do this, I can make this happen. I can certainly make this happen. Because that educator, that teacher, that principal, that superintendent, that assistant principal, that person says to himself or herself, I understand that these students are the future we're looking for, and I have an opportunity to send my stamp to the future. I will stamp my knowledge upon theirs, and together we will accomplish great things. I can't wait to see how they maximize their potential. So products from the refinery and talent from mentoring. Wow, you can't get too much better than that. So mentoring is the key to watching your legacy grow. So we're asking you as educators to lean into the life of the student, lean into the life of the peer. And what do I mean by lean into? That is a commitment beyond the routine and the expected. There are certain things that happen with a job description that we all know what that is, because to some degree, our salaries may be attached to that. So we know that job description. But good mentoring is leaning into the life of another person, is a commitment to go beyond the routine and the expected, to live off the page of the job description and become that other person that refines deeply and refines consistently and come out with much more than you could have ever imagined. Now, let's go to door number 2. Are you excited? I am. Door number 2. And let me tell you why I'm excited. I have been working with a gentleman with the technology part of this. And we spent, I guess maybe a couple of hours, a couple of days ago, and I did everything wrong, but he was so gracious about it. So when we came in today for my time, I'm in the back room trying to learn what to do. And they told me, gave me all kind of clues and cues, and I did it. So he's a young man filled with exuberance. I'm the older guy, loaded with experience. So my statement to all of you is this: there are no better companions to travel the road to the future than that of exuberance and experience linked together. So young man, thank you for all of your help. And Corey, thank you for not laughing at all the things I couldn't do. But we're here today to door number 2, and we're going to talk about planning beyond the known. In other words, there's a place called comfortable. And in that place, we sort of know what to do. The lesson plan is there. We've done it for a few years. We know it verbatim now. We know it. But I am talking about planning beyond the known. And there are 3 things we're going to look at that's behind this door number 2. The first is inquisitiveness. The second thing is imagination. And the third thing is introspection. All three of these will be essential as you become and embrace becoming an entrepreneurial educator. Okay, let's go. Leader to leader, the future should always be an agenda item. This is what Thomas Friedman has said. Technology is accelerating our lives faster than our ability to adapt. But we have some options, and those options are versatility, adaptability, and lifelong learning. Now, I know that Thomas Friedman did not come down to Kansas City and talk with Corey and the team there. But what he has actually said is that technology is accelerating our lives faster than our ability to adapt. We have options, and those options are called the CAPS system. That's what you're in. You are in that option. Yes, the world is accelerating at rapid speed, but CAPS is designed to be a leader in that process, not just someone on the sideline watching it, discussing it, and wondering what happened. No, we're going to be in the making it happen because of who we are and what we have committed ourselves to do and become. Now, inquisitiveness as an asset is key to legacy building and responding to change. Knowing the right question to ask is at the core of strategic thinking, according to Peter Drucker. Albert Einstein said, and I love this quote, "I have no special talent." Well, if any of you have read any of the works of Albert Einstein, you know that this man had tons of talent. But what he's helping us to clearly understand is this: I am only passionately curious. Aha. He has talent, but he's saying that his talent basically has been was informed by his curiosity. So the curious person, the inquisitive person, absolutely essential. And the one thing that I always say to every adult, never quit being that inquisitive child. You know, the 5-year-old, the 6-year-old, you're sitting at having dinner table, having a meal there, and all of a sudden you have a nice plate of green beans you're eating. Everyone is sort of happy. And Johnny or Mary says to mom or dad, "Why are the green beans yellow? Or why aren't they red?" And just go through a battery of questions. And we so badly want to say, "Shut up and eat." But you know, the good parent would never say that. The good parent would say, "Well, let's talk about this at another time." And we'll get the encyclopedia, or in today's world, I'll get my iPhone, I'll get my laptop, and we'll look all this up for you and see. But the idea is this: inquisitiveness is a gift that every human being has. Starts at the very early age. Statements are not made by children early on. Questions are asked. Inquisitiveness is a defining tool of who we are as humans. Our ability to ask questions brings about the answers and the innovation that we now enjoy. So this is what I'm saying to you as educators. Never quit being that inquisitive child. Never quit being that inquisitive child. And Albert Einstein also said, and I will read to you this little part here, imagination is more important than knowledge. That's the second asset. Accelerate your imagination. It's an asset. It is just as valuable as your doctorate, your master's, or your graduate degree or undergraduate degree, or a special course that you took. Imagination is not something that is held captive by 5- and 6-year-olds and they don't let go of it. No, to accelerate your imagination is to embrace this incredible asset. Albert Einstein said, imagination is more important than knowledge. Why would he say that? Because once we look at the word knowledge, this is what we know. This is what we see. But imagination, well, let me finish saying what he said. For knowledge is limited, whereas our imagination embraces the entire world, stimulating progress, giving birth to evolution. That's how important imagination is. So my suggestion to all of you, if we have this, it's an asset that we have, but we have been sort of not necessarily embracing it to the level that we should. But that to me is one of the things that really drove me to CAPS and interests me in becoming part of this incredible way of learning and teaching, is they weren't afraid to stretch their imagination. They weren't afraid to accelerate who the student could become and what he or she could do, and to go outside of the proverbial box and to see how the students perform and participate. Every time I go to CAPS and have a chance to sit and talk with 3 or 4 students, I am blown away. I'm blown away because what I formerly thought, I've come to understand, is not all of what life is about. Excuse me as I take a nice drink of water. The first time I was doing Zoom, I didn't realize that the constant talk, your throat becomes dry and you need water. So I had no water bottle. It was a fiasco. Now I have the water bottle and life is better. The world changed last night. The class of 1958 is forever gone. Technology is accelerating our lives faster than our ability to adapt. And I simply mean that the world changed last night. So we have a future that is not in a faraway land. It's literally closer than right around the corner. It's on our doorstep, and it's up to us to open the doors and let it in. Now, introspection is one of the third ones that we talked about in this entrepreneurial deal. Leonardo da Vinci has been defined as one of the most inquisitive persons to have ever lived. But he was also a person who was not held captive by his present reality. And what do I mean by that is this. Oftentimes, as an educator or as a business person, once we become well-versed and well knowledgeable in doing certain things, we don't want to let go of that. And we hold fast to that. And when something new comes along, rather than reaching out for it, we sometimes find ourselves sort of pulling in because it takes us beyond what we know. And so what I'm really saying is that Leonardo da Vinci said, these are his words, do not be constrained by your present reality. And constrained it's almost like, just don't be too comfortable at your present reality, or don't be afraid to go beyond your present reality. But it's about a disruption. Do not be constrained by your present reality. It's also saying, do not be afraid of a disruption. And to that point, the Mona Lisa was not an accident. For the time that Leonardo da Vinci started as a young man, taking lessons from the masters of the day during the height of the Italian Renaissance and all that was going on, when his father put him in art school, he came to art school with 10,000 questions. And that was the wrong thing at the wrong time. All of the professors, all of the art instructors wanted Leonardo out of their class because they couldn't get their work done because he was taking their minds to a different place. And this is what the future does. And this is what technology drives us in a way that, yes, we know what happened 20 years ago. We know what happened 15 years ago. We know what happened 10 years ago. But CAPS is saying, what's going to happen 10 years from now? And that's the road we travel. So introspection is a journey that we take to ask ourselves the question, is what I'm doing moving me ahead, or is it holding me back? Now, this is not to dismiss the past by any means at all, but to look at the past as a launching pad to take you on a trip with Richard Branson and Jeff Bezos. Never let your past be a holding pattern, but let it become a launching pad to get you to the other place. The Mona Lisa, I guess if Leonardo da Vinci was alive today, he'd be slightly over maybe 501 years old. I mean, it's been a time now, long time. But the Louvre is still turning people away. They're still coming to see, what did this guy do that no one else had done before? How did he get a smile that still captivates 500 years later? He got the smile that captivates because he learned everything about the human face, every muscle that moved, and what caused a smile to be. Just remember that. Going beyond the known is what takes you to space. Going beyond the known is what will take CAPS to be an incredible institution that the world has been waiting on. Let's see what's next. Door number 3. And this is the foundational door. It's called a bridge building culture. And I'm going to take you on a journey to the Mississippi Delta. You'll meet my great-grandfather again, to the 8 habits of the heart, because these are the timeless and universal tools that are absolutely essential to build a sustained culture. Let me read something to you that I wrote in 1997 that I think probably has more value today than it did when I wrote it. I needed friendship as a child, and our communities were needed tomorrow. Young children laughing and running in daycare centers and on playgrounds today will look to us to build a good community for them. And if they are to pass the gift of friendship on, they must see it being practiced. Though our grandchildren may one day have playgrounds on the moon and attend special schools among the stars, laughter and sharing the evidence of friendship will still look and sound the same. Yes, we can go to the edge of space in 2 times. We can become astronauts. We can place the flag on the moon. And there will no doubt be a time that I thought about the future in 1997, that our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren will one day play among the stars. But building a good culture where community exists will be just as vital in 2050 or the year 3000 as it currently is today. So let's look at the timeless and universal 8 habits of the heart. My journey because of them. Unselfishness lived out, and inside of the unselfishness of the Porch people of the Mississippi Delta were the 8 habits of the heart. And these 8 habits have literally traveled around the world. USA Today had called this book their #1 choice of books to direct and change our lives. It has been amazing to me that this small volume has had so much impact literally around the globe, helping average people, everyday people like myself and all of us to clearly understand how not only to build a good community, but to sustain that good community as well. So we connect, we build bridges, we keep the lights on. And this is what we want you as educators to think about. 8 Habits of the Heart for Educators is the book that I used and introduced at Harvard University when I lectured there for 5 years to their K-12 Principal Center on how to connect, how to build bridges, and why it's important to keep the lights on. And once you begin to understand that, we're talking about nurturing attitude, responsibility, dependability, friendship, sisterhood, brotherhood, high expectation, courage, and hope. How do these 8 habits come to life? How do they make a difference in our lives? And how do they create the type of environment that allows us to literally welcome the future and be prepared to go beyond wherever we have started? Build bridging, connecting people. The first one is nurturing attitude. A nurturing attitude is characterized by unselfish caring, supportiveness, and a willingness to share time. But more importantly, nurturing attitude will always be a person. It will be all of you, some of you, any of you, but hopefully all of you. For me, it was my great-grandparents, Joe and Pearl Young. They literally were this habit of our heart. Beyond this habit, become this habit through daily unselfish action. The memories formed through shared experiences from unselfish acts of kindness. These are the elements of community that build lifetime bridges. And all ages will need this experience. My great-grandparents were the people that opened the screen door for me and set me out on a journey of discovery, that there was life beyond the cotton fields of the Mississippi Delta, and that I could find my way into that world that still awaited me. And that is what you as educators do every single day. You connect and give young people through your unselfish caring an idea of their importance and that the world awaits them. The second habit of the heart is responsibility. And again, responsibility is a person. You build bridges, you connect people. Responsibility is showing and encouraging a personal commitment to each task. Leaders become this habit through daily unselfish action. No need to trouble yourself, they would say. You can count on me. They called it your good word. This is how responsibility looked when I was a young boy. It hasn't changed. Your peers need this. My great uncle Cleve was that habit of the heart. This is the man who owned the ice house in Glen Allen, Mississippi. And it was his life that I wrote about that has become the book Who Owns the Ice House, that has been translated into multiple languages and is used in schools and businesses literally around the world, helping them to understand the look and feel of the culture that literally supports entrepreneurial thinking, entrepreneurial teaching, the entrepreneurial principle, the entrepreneurial superintendent. Entrepreneurial is not held captive by getting a job or starting a business, even though it works well with both. It jumpstarts our life in a very incredible way. Now let's look at the next habit of the heart. Becoming dependability. Dependability is being there for others through all the times of their lives, a steady influence that makes tomorrow a welcome event. This is the lady, my great aunt, who was this habit of the heart. I can absolutely tell you, had it not been for her, I would not be on this Zoom call today. She is the sole responsibility for how my life turned out. I went to live with my great aunt after my great grandparents passed away. And when I walked into her home, she said, "You will get an education." Now, that's an easy thing to say, but it's difficult because the white high school was right behind my house. I couldn't go to that high school. Our schools only went to the 8th grade. So what do you do after the 8th grade? You have to travel 100 miles round trip every single day to school. My great aunt said, "You will go to school every day. If we don't have lunch money, don't worry about it. You can eat when you come home, but you will not miss one day out of school." Well, ladies, gentlemen, I graduated, valedictorian of my class, never missed a day out of school after traveling 100 miles round trip every school day for 4 years. A member of Phi Beta Kappa today because my great aunt got up every morning before I did, stood on the front porch, pulled the strings on a 60-watt light bulb to let the bus driver know that I was indeed going to school that day. That was unselfishness in action, building a bridge, connecting people. She became dependability. She gave her word, she kept her word. And because she kept her word, my life was changed forever. It is not enough to observe what is needed to be able to articulate what is missing. Dependability requires action. And my great aunt was an action-oriented person. Your staff needs this as well. We don't accomplish anything in this world alone. The words of Sandra Day O'Connor, the first female Supreme Court Justice of the United States of America. These were the words she said as she introduced me when I spoke to the Supreme Court and 150 of their guests. She had read the book, 8 Habits of the Heart, and clearly understood that I had created within that book a look of community and what it means for unselfishness to be connected from one to another. And whatever happens is the result of the whole tapestry of one's life and all the weavings of individual threads from one to another that creates something. Friendship. Friendship is a habit that binds people together when we take pleasure in each other's company. We listen, we laugh, we share good times and bad. Become this habit through daily unselfish action. The story, a place for me. True friendship can form bridges between people that last all their lives. But when friendship is absent, people live in envy and fear, and community breaks down. Silos are formed and communication is limited. Friendship, when shown, becomes an antidote to loneliness and low self-esteem. Friendship among your peers and friendship among your students and friendship among the parents and caretakers that send their students to your school. This habit of the heart is incredible. This is a picture of Miss Mary Maxey, my first grade teacher. And this is the lady that welcomed me to the first grade. But I remember distinctively what she said, because I didn't want to go to school that day. I was crying and pouting, and my great-grandmother was alive at that time. So she took me down to the school, put my hands in Miss Max's hand and said, "This is my boy. I want you to make something out of him." Her expectations were high for me. Miss Max's expectations were high for me. Instead of welcoming me, just saying, "Clifton, come on in," she said, "Little professor, we have a place for you." Little did she know that one day, this kid who lived literally in the cotton fields would have an opportunity to be a professor at some of the most prestigious places of learning in our country and around the world. But she didn't know that. She didn't have to know that. She expected the best. She was going to give her best. And she knew that that best would turn out to be good. And within community, this is what we're saying for all of you, that your presence matters. And we all need this type of friendship. She remembered an academic leader. She pointed to the starlit heavens and told us to remember that we were among the stars, bright, gifted, and shining. Even in the daylight, when the sun's brightness overshadowed the light from the stars, she said the stars were constantly shining and expected no less from us. Learning was to be our constant pursuit wherever we were. Those were the words of my first grade teacher, words that were uttered to me some over 60 years ago, telling me to shine. Just shine. And what drives the shining is the pursuit of your learning, and make that a very constant pursuit. Brotherhood, sisterhood, this is the habit that reaches beyond comfortable relationships to extend a welcome to those who may be different from ourselves. In my world, growing up in the Mississippi Delta, legal segregation was the law of the land, and everybody adhered to that. Working for Mrs. Knights was a change in my life, an experience that I would need, because I would need to write the story that no matter how strict legal segregation was and how divided the races were, there was a memory, there is a memory, there was a person that I remember who broke the rules of legal segregation in my life. She invited me to do work for her, and on the first day of work, going to the table for food, she said, "No, come on, go with me." And she said, let's follow me. And I did. I followed her out of the sewing shop what she owned, out on the lawn where I'd been hired to rake fig leaves. And I was walking to the back door to the kitchen, because in my world, in my days, the only entry for a Black person into a white person's home would have been the kitchen door. So I was headed that way. And she started just, "No, no, 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 come on, follow me." And I followed her into her home. My muddy feet on her hardwood floor, we sat at the table together, eating our meal. And she asked me, she said, "Well, what books are you reading?" And I thought that was rather unusual, because she had hired me to rake fig leaves, not to have a lesson in literature. I told her the books that I was reading. She said, "You can't read those books. You need to read books from the library." And I had to tell her, I can't go to the library. And silence fell over the kitchen. Her maid was there, and no one said a word. And we finished eating. She went back to her sewing shop. The maid went back to her work, and I went back to raking fig leaves. The next week when I came, sitting beside my table, my plate at the table, were a stack of books, including the classics. And this would go on until I graduated from high school. And she made sure that I would be reading the books that would prepare me for a future that was knocking at my door. Educators, you are so important, so incredibly important. The world has changed, and all of its residents are becoming our neighbors, and we are challenged to stretch our tables to include others. Educators must lead the way in creating learning environments where all are respected, affirmed, and included. Be intentional. Stretch your tables. Create new narratives that the world will need today. Become high expectations. High expectations involve believing that others can be successful, telling them so, and praising their accomplishment. This story marked for good. For some young people, schools are the first place where they are exposed to this incredible world of self-discovery, self-reliance, and personal independence. As an educator, you are in a unique position to welcome that student to that world. But this is a shotgun house in the corner. It was the home of a man that we call the Old African. He was a stutterer. He cut grass, cut hedges for other people, but he also was a scavenger of books because he knew we couldn't go to the library. So any old book he would find, a magazine, that little shotgun house of his, as it was called in the Delta, was just filled with magazines and books all around his bed. And on Saturdays, he would walk those 12 miles to where we live, and we'd be out in the front yard shooting marbles or something like that. And he would, in his stuttering voice, he would ask my grandfather for water. Hey, young, give me a drink of water. My grandfather would get him a drink of water, and then he would take his satchel that was filled with books, and he would begin to read to us. His expectations were that we would be more than cotton field workers, we would be more than tractor drivers, we would be more than butlers and maids, but we would become major contributors to this country. And he talked from that perspective. And in his stuttering voice, he would read to us. And then he would tell us, every one of us individually, that you are marked for good. And Emily Dickinson probably said it best. There is no frigate like a book to take you to places that you have never been, shores you have never seen, and to people you can hardly imagine. The Old African took us to a different place. And this is what educators do today. This is why CAPS is so important, because it is not held captive by the past, but it is looking to the future to see all that our students can become. The seventh habit of the heart is courage. Courage is standing up and doing the right thing, speaking out on the behalf of others, and making a commitment to excellence in the face of adversity or the absence of support. This is Reverend Roy Grisham, the uncle of the great writer John Grisham. He was the pastor of the United Methodist Church on the campus of Ole Miss during the 1960s when Ole Miss was being integrated. He laid his life and his profession online to find a place for Black students to hide if need be, whenever the eruption would take place. And I know this firsthand because my younger sister was one of the students to integrate Ole Miss. And I can tell you that it takes courage to go against the culture that has surrounded your life all your life. And for this man to lay his culture down and to take up for what was right was a story of reality that I will always remember and I will always tell. Courage is not an abstraction. It was Reverend Roy Grisham. It has always been a person, hopefully all of you. Courage rewards not only those who practice it, but those who witness it as well. Your show of courage reminds your peers and the students that it is still a worthy quality to possess. We can't build a good community without courage. Basically, stand up for others, peers, and students. And the last habit of the heart is hope. This is the last door that we will talk about, building bridges, connecting people. Hope is believing in tomorrow, going beyond what we see because we have learned to see with our heart. Become this habit through daily unselfish action. This is my birth mother. My mother was an educator at the last parts of her life. Early on in her life, my mom was a maid. She had 6 kids, 2 boys and 4 girls. I was the only of her children that she did not raise herself. I was raised by her grandparents and her great aunt and my great great aunt. But my mother fed me every single day of her life. I ate at her house, but I never slept there. I always stayed with my great aunt. My mother was a maid, and she thought that would be the end of her world, but she wanted to make sure that her children had an education. Everyone graduated from high school and college and graduate school and beyond. But while we were all in college, my mother was coerced by several friends. Mary, why don't you become involved in Project Head Start? Well, in order to do that, one had to go back to school to get certified to do so, which meant traveling to the University of Alabama in Tuscaloosa. My mother finally said she would and went and hitchhiked to Tuscaloosa, Alabama, to the university there and became an A student and one of the leaders of Head Start in the Mississippi Delta. She had such a reputation for education, such a reputation for dealing with parents, and such a reputation for loving children that Rose Kennedy, Robert Kennedy, and Sergeant Shriver came to the Mississippi Delta to meet this lady that everyone called Miss Mary. She was an incredible educator that almost got lost in the suds and in the cooking and washing for others. But finally, she was able to maximize her potential and to live the last days of her life, changing the lives of others. And as an educator, I've had the opportunity to lecture at schools on the East Coast, those in New York City and those outside. In one of the community colleges that I worked with outside of New York City, the chancellor came up to me one day and said, Mr. Taulbert, I have a name for you, and it's Mary Morgan Taulbert. Do you know that name? I said, of course, that's my mother's name. He said, did you know that all the papers that your mother wrote for Head Start, that they are now archived at New York University? And for those of us getting our terminal degree in social work, we cannot complete it without going through your mother's papers and writing a paper of our own. She wrote about how to build, how to get much out of a little. That was the concept of her writing, how to take these poor people of the Delta and help them understand who they really were and to maximize their potential for the benefit of their children. All educators are futurists. You're driven by your belief that you are investing knowledge for a future return. Just as Mary stood at the front door, welcomed the Head Start students, not just to school, but to a future of possibilities. This is what we're talking about, hope, the bridge that continues to connect others to their possibilities. So educators, CAP friends and partners, never underestimate the power of your presence. We all need cheerleaders close by. I want you to be able to say within your heart to every student, I will be your strength. I will be your home. You may walk a lonely road, but you will never walk alone. There are lengthening steps that will be the CAP's legacy. And lastly, because of the unselfishness of others, much of my dreaming became reality. And so it can be for the peers and students your lives touch. Thank each of you for allowing me time to share.
Wow. Clifton, thank you so much for sharing your story with us and all the various elements of it, just tying together why we're in the business that we're in. Lydia, do you have any? I'm seeking words, so I'm going to pass it to you.
Thank you so much for your inspiring and beautiful story. I'm so glad that we've recorded it so that we can share it and use it in teacher preparation and for future conversations. Deep thanks to you, Mr. Taulbert. I don't have words, so there you go.
Thank you. And for everyone else who's out there who spent the day with us, whether it was for a session or two or for the full day, on behalf of CAPS Network and Lydia and her team at Northeastern University, thank you for your participation. We hope that this was useful and helpful to you as you contemplate what your next step is in moving into profession-based learning. We're here to help. We're here to stay connected with you. Please continue to visit Preparing for Purpose website. You will find information at preparingforpurpose.org. That is also where our sessions will be archived. and you'll be able to access those here in the coming days to relive some of these experiences, or as I mentioned earlier, to cure your fear of missing out for any sessions that maybe you weren't able to attend. With that, I just want to thank all of you again. We appreciate you. We appreciate this community and the movement that's ahead. And we are excited for what is possible and what our imaginations and curiosity will allow us to do when we let students lead and we go where students lead us.
And
Thank
good
you so
heart.
much.
Thank you.